I was one of the young guys out there. I started in 2009. I'm 45 now. If I'm the young guy at 45, there's a youth problem.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Mate's Faster. Today is a two-wheeled variety. This mate of mine, he has been over 320 miles an hour on a motorcycle Streamliner, so he's a part of an elite group. He's one of the few people on the planet on a motorcycle who have gone over 300 mile an hour. There's not many of them out there. I want to welcome from Elko, Nevada, John Levie. All right, welcome John Levie to My Mate's Faster. How you going, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, very good. It's great to see you, and I appreciate your time and coming on board today. We're going to start these episodes by saying, how fast have you been?
I've been 320.
And do you remember that run, mate? I guess, I remember my fast one. You've had a few, but do you remember that 320 run?
The 320 was pretty memorable. Really, any of them over 300, because I've only had, I guess, 5 or 6 runs over 300. But the runs over 300 are very memorable, but there's a bunch of runs that lead up to that 300 that's equally as memorable.
Sure.
Your first run where you qualified for a record, your first run over 100, your first run over 200, your first run over 250 on a motorcycle. That 250 number is a big digit.
And the 320 mile an hour run, I know it was in your sidecar Streamliner. You obviously led up to that, like the 250 and stuff. When did you start getting going in the sidecar Streamliner?
We built that bike in 2014. That was the first year that we ran it, actually. We took probably 8 months to build it. And then we had some pretty poor salt conditions, weren't able to run it for a little while. The salt was shut down. There was no racing. We were in a year of rain holds, and there was just, time where we couldn't run the bike. So that was pretty pitiful to have this brand new unit sitting there just ready to go and no course to run it on.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think a lot of people think you got the horsepower, you got the machine. There's a lot more to it, isn't there? There's, team dynamics, the salt, the weather. There's a bunch of stuff that can definitely set you back a number of years.
Yeah, and you don't realize it when you're building a new race vehicle for the salt flats, just how vulnerable it is to nature. And, it's like we built this bike with no suspension because the course was smooth when we designed it. And then the next couple of years, the course was fairly rough. They weren't able to groom the course. So even though we had a bike that was ready to go, we couldn't go fast with it. And that's kind of what we ran into in the later years of running the bike after we hit the 300 mile an hour mark and we started just chasing different records that weren't 300. We needed to go slower because it's all that the course would handle.
Yeah, sure. So, mate, if we wind it right back, if you look in the record book, there's another name beside you as well, the Guthrie, Scott Guthrie, and look, my condolences on Scott passing last year. I know you guys are very close. How did you guys come to be? You're obviously at the Salt. Did you meet at the Salt, or how'd that team work?
Yeah, we did. We met at the Salt Flats. I was in Impound in 2009 with my Honda 50. The bike started out as kind of that was the gateway drug for me to get into land speed racing. I built a little bike that I wanted to go learn the ropes on before I went too fast with it. And I was going about 48 mile an hour with the motorcycle, and it was fast enough to qualify for the record. So I'm in Impound thinking I'm hot stuff. And this guy walks up to me and he says, "Oh, nice bike. Was that a show bike or a race bike?" I looked at him and I'm like, "What do you think it is? It's in Impound, you jerk." And he says, "Oh, I'm Scott Guthrie." Well, anybody that's read the rule book knows who Scott Guthrie is. So I shut up and I listened real quick. And he gave me a couple pointers on what I needed to do to the bike to make it go faster. And by the end of the week, we were over 55 mile an hour. We set the record of 55.912. So this guy just come up to me and gave me a couple ideas on what to do, what to change, and was very helpful in setting a record that I think is going to stick for a while. There's been some other competitors that have went after that record. Nobody's got it yet. Nobody owns these records. We're just renters, and I'm hoping I rent this record for a long time. That 50cc record is probably my favorite record out of all of them. It beats my 300 mile an hour stuff. It beats all of them because that's the record where Guthrie and I formed our relationship. And he was instrumental to my land speed racing career.
Well, I have all new respect for you, mate, because you know that I've got a 50cc record as well. We do sort of say we are brothers from another mother sometimes. So welcome to I'm glad I'm part of that team and the 50cc. And it's, look, what an amazing trip to go from the 50cc with Scott all the way up to 320 mile an hour in a sidecar Streamliner. I guess there's some memorable runs along the way over those years. Have you got a couple in your head that really stick out?
My runs when I got into the 200 mile an hour club were magic. I got into the 2 club at 218, 420, and the work that went into getting into the 200 mile an hour club was massive. Anybody that's in the club can tell you how hard it is to get there. The first runs in the Streamliner were huge because it was such a learning curve to go from sit-on bikes to kneeler sidecars to sitting in a sidecar Streamliner. All of these lessons that I learned along the way were huge, and all of the runs were important, and they all had some kind of a meaning to me in one way or another. It was just, how do you look back on them and pick your favorite? A lot of people can say it's their fastest, but I look at the lessons that I learned along the way and the motors that got sawed in half and, the carnage that happened to get there. It's a lot of work, and it's not always about the fast runs, and every record takes up the same space in the book. So it don't matter if it's a 300 mile an hour record or a 55.912 mile an hour record. A record's a record. You look at some of the relationships and friendships that we build along the way. I've had some buddies that are just lifelong friends that I've met at the Salt Flats that were playing key roles in setting some of these records and making some of the passes. And, one year I met some buddies from back east. They were camped out at the bend in the road with us, and we were playing with a little Honda 90, and we also had the Honda 50 there. And we met them in impound. They come by and they just kind of check the bikes out. And it's like, that must have been 2010 when I met the Van Horns, Louie and Carl's daughter, Rebecca. They ended up coming back out to the Salt Flats with us for years. And, these guys are lifelong friends now that have, we made them playing with sub 100 mile an hour motorcycles, just having a blast. So, I never knew Louie didn't know how to drive until he was the only guy that I could talk into coming with me for return runs one morning. I'm like, hey, I need somebody to drive my truck back to the start line. And Lou was like, this kid camping out next to us at the bend in the road. And I said, come help me, man. He's like, all right, cool. So I asked his dad, Lou was young at the time. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I borrow your kid in the morning to help me return run? My crew was, whooped because that's just what we do. We run 4 or 5 bikes every speed week, and we just drag everybody through the dirt trying to get records set, and everybody's tired. And I talked the neighboring kid at the camp into coming with us with me to run my truck back to the end of the course and then shuttle me because I had multiple bikes qualified that day. And we get to the end of the asphalt to go off the boat ramp onto the Salt Flats. And I said, I was in my Ford Raptor at the time. I said, you ever driven a Raptor before? And he says, I've never driven before. I'm like,
that's a good start.
Well, guess what, buddy? You're going to learn. So he slid over into the driver's seat and put her in gear, and down the road we went. I said, well, that's perfect. Meet me at the 4.
Good stuff. Yeah, look, I think I've had the same. Well, you and I, mate, we've met each other a few years ago now, and I stay with you when I come over there, and the friendships that are made are definitely lifelong ones, and Land Speed Racing community is surely a great one. It does lead into the next question, I guess. We're an aging generation. There's a bit more grey on you and me than there probably was a decade ago. What do we need to do to get young guys into this sport and keep it moving? Because you've probably seen the numbers fall away as I have. So what have we got to do there?
This is kind of a hot topic that we've talked about recently on social media platforms, and there's been a lot of interest in dads looking for ways to get their kids into the sport. And I think that a pretty cool avenue would be small displacement motorcycles with possibly even a speed limit. If we say we're going to have a 100cc limit, and if you break 100 mile an hour, which is totally doable, like we know this is a possible thing, but almost make it like a bracket race. Who can get the closest to 100 without breaking out on 100? There's a lot of ways to make this sport with a a pretty cheap entry and a fairly inexpensive cost as far as the platform to race. And I think motorcycles are definitely the way to get kids into the sport. Obviously, you're not going to have a 12-year-old in a 800 horsepower car bombing down the salt flats when they can't even drive on the street. But any kid can go to the Honda shop and buy themselves some kind of motorcycle to go learn how to ride on the dirt. Once they get the dirt figured out, head to the salt flats.
So you think that's a case of maybe the DLRA, the SCTA, AMA, those guys having a fleet of bikes, or do you think it's just a run what you brung 100cc class for juniors?
I think it's, like any other kind of racing. I think you need to bring your own stuff, and, you'd have your own safety equipment. You need to have your own race vehicle. And, I think if you could build it for $2,500, you'd get a lot of kids interested. And I think you'd get some young blood in the sport, and maybe dad would even want to show up. Right now, it's very difficult for a kid to get out there and make a go of it. You have to be 16. You have to have a driver's license. That's difficult.
I can sort of qualify that because I sponsor a couple of kids over here in Australia who ride motocross, and they're 11 and 12. So, if we continue on the same path like you're saying, and they've got to be 16, they're gone, aren't they? Motocross has got them, or they're flat tracking, or they're jumping bikes. So by the time they're 16, Land Speed's lost them really until maybe they're 55, 60 again. Like a lot of the people seem to come back as that bucket list, end of your career trip to go to Bonneville or elsewhere. So yeah, I have to agree with you that I think the young age we've got to get the hook in and change something there for sure.
Well, I think land speed racing is probably the golf of motorsports, possibly the bowling. There's not a lot of physical requirements to ride a motorcycle down the salt flats. Like you don't have to train for 6 months to go run down the salt. I think that, a lot of these 12-year-old kids probably have more physical capability than 90% of the people that are running down the salt flats right now. They just don't have the experience. And by the time you have the experience behind the wheel on the salt flats, you don't have very long to participate in the sport because the clock's ticking. I was one of the young guys out there. I started in 2009. I'm 45 now. So here we are, 17 years later. It's gotten to the point that if I'm the young guy at 45, there's a youth problem.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I guess we leave that to the powers to be, and hopefully we see a change, in the near future or some direction. Whether it's what that suggestion or whether it's another. I think a change is good, mate. The first time you saw the salt, do you remember it? I remember going to Bonneville in 2010 with my dad, and my little brother, and we drove off the boat ramp there, and we drove about 400 feet and stopped and got out of the RV and went, How's this place? Do you remember your first trip there?
So I was actually a newborn. So I was born in October of 1980. So by that time, I missed the land speed racing season of the first year of my life. But my dad and his buddy Scott, who actually crewed for me the first year that I ran at the Salt, they had been going to the Salt Flats since, the late 60s, early 70s. And I went by default with my dad as a newborn in August of 1981. So I can't remember that far back.
Well, yeah, sure. And I guess because you were just going every year, there was never a, oh, wow, check this out moment really for you.
To me, it was always one of those sports where I always wanted to do it. But because I wasn't legally, according to the SCTA rulebook, capable of doing it, we never did it. I was busy racing dirt bikes and cars. I raced circle track pro stock dirt cars and boats. I raced 14-foot flat bottom 800 horsepower boats before I ever threw a leg over a bike on the salt flats. But for the first 20 years of my life, I pedaled my bicycle from the start line to the end of the long course, or as far as the pits would allow me to go. And if nobody yelled at me, I could get way out there on a bicycle. And, those are the times that I remember as a kid, just going way out there, finding the 50 caliber shells from the military in the salt, just wedged in the ground. And, there was times that I would turn my shirt into a 50 cal shell holder and come back to the pickup with like 10 pounds of brass in my shirt. And I'd be as red as a lobster from the sunburn, front and back, because it reflects everywhere. But I would go out there and just collect 50 cal shells, because it was, as a kid, it was, you say, you watch that all day, pretty soon you start getting bored. It's like, I would way rather be out here participating, so I'm just going to come out and find the 50 cal shells. Give me something to do.
When you were running, I do know you put a lot of people, like you talk about how hard it was to get into the 2 Club. I do know you've put a lot of people into the 2 Club on one of your bikes. What's the biggest mistake you see Land Speed racers make, like a rookie make? I'm looking after the rookies this year at Speed Week in Australia, or helping out anyway. What's the biggest thing you see they do wrong, or a couple of things they do wrong? You could help them out.
I think the first thing that you need to do is know the rule book. Don't buy one, buy 3. Buy one for as many toilets as you have in the house. Every time you need to spend a minute sitting on the throne, pull that book out and give it a read, because you can't know the book well enough. That's number 1. Know the book. Number 2, understand the procedures. And if you've never been out there as a spectator and you're just going to build a race vehicle, show up and think you're going to go make a 400 mile an hour run, you're probably going to want to go spend some time out there, maybe with a team, get your feet wet, learning the administrative side of it before you show up and botch it just by, doing something against what the rules say in it. There's a lot of rules that we look at them and say, why does this exist? A lot of things don't make any sense in the land speed world, but unfortunately it's their sandbox and everybody has to abide by the same rules, even if they're goofy. So I think the better you know the goofy rules, the better off you're going to be.
When you were while you were growing up and you're obviously going to the site with your dad and getting those sunburns and collecting that brass, your heroes in the sport, you're in America, so, we're probably a bit different in Australia, who we only saw our heroes on magazines, and you being in America in 1980, 1990, it's a bit of a different time. How did you see your heroes? Who were your heroes?
Sam Wheeler, Rocky Robinson, Dave Campos.
Yeah,
pick a bike liner guy.
Yeah.
But then there was, the nitro burners, Al Teague.
Yeah.
I've never heard a vehicle go down the salt like Al's liner. When you hear that thing at full song at over 400, that is a sound that's just car guy, bike guy, it don't matter who you are. If that don't wake you up in the morning, oh man, it's good. And the smell of the nitro, any guy out there running nitro, instant hero status. We even have modern day guys. John Beck. Take a look at the 911 Roadster and Donnie Cummins and what those guys are doing. A 300 mile an hour 34 Roadster. 32, whatever it is. I don't know my old Roadsters well. I'm a bike guy. Yeah. But I'll tell you, when that thing lights up and you feel it in your chest, I've been on return runs in the morning with those guys, and that's beauty, man. Yeah. These guys are just awesome running a big whack of nitro. It's
a beautiful thing. I had the pleasure, I should say mistake, I found out that I was pitted beside them in impound in 17, and it's pretty noisy in the morning trying to sort your life out when you've got the 911 beside you warming up.
Yeah, and for some reason your eyes burn like mad.
Yeah, the nitric acid definitely it fills the air. Mate, what are you doing now? You haven't. I know that you're not sort of doing. You've taken a bit of a break from the land speed racing. What's keeping John Levie and the motorsport passion? What are you filling that time with?
So I've been open road racing a Chevy Colorado pickup that we've also driven at a alleged high speed rate across the country. Some people know it as a cannonball run. So open road racing is a very legal form of road racing on highways here in America, where they shut the highway down and it's like a bracket race. You pick a speed that you think you want to be the closest to, and you drive 90 miles one way. Some of the races are 90 miles down, 60 miles up. Some races are 60 down, 60 back. It's a form of really long distance drag racing to see who can get closest to their dial-in time.
Sure.
That's been fun. I've been riding bicycles a lot. It's a very weird, it is a paradigm shift there from 300 mile an hour motorcycles to a bicycle that you have to pedal. I've turned myself into the motor of a bicycle.
I've got to say, mate, you're looking good. You're looking trim. I think if you put the old race suit on now, she might be a bit baggy.
Well, at least I'll fit into it because
Yeah.
when I got that suit built in, let's see, I think I had my new suit built from NJK in 2010 or 11, and I was about the size that I am now when I had it built.
Okay.
And then over a decade and a half, I start plumping up, and I think to myself, how did this happen? I didn't even see it coming. It's just one day my leathers need to be let out, and I'm like, okay, this isn't working for me. I need to trim back down again.
Well, I need to get your secret because I've got 2 weeks
Yeah.
before Australian Speedway.
Eat 1,000 calories a day and burn 2,000 calories a day on a bicycle, and then you'll lose weight.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Hey, so well, do you see yourself, mate, like you're out of the land speed racing picture a little bit at the moment, taking a break? Do you see yourself sliding back in there anytime in the future?
You never know. You don't ever want to say never. It's one of those sports that, once the hook is set, how do you ever really get away from it? There's not a lot left for me to prove in the sport or to really accomplish. I think I've hit the end of my financial capabilities, and I've definitely hit the end of my desire to go any faster than 320. And from here on out, it's just clicking off records. And when is enough records? I've got 100 of them. I got a wall full of trophies and plaques, and I don't want to say that I hit the end of the sport, but I just hit the end of what I'm capable of in the sport. And I think there's going to have to be something, a real target for me to ever want to get back behind a bike again. But if somebody said, hey, we want you to run our piece of equipment, I might consider that. The work that goes into, the 20 minutes of actual race time that you get a year on the salt flats, it's just after almost 20 years of spending my entire life revolving around 20 minutes a year of enjoyment, I think I've just hit my limit, and I have a lot of other things that I want to do. I'm not 90 thinking that this is all that I have left until the day I tip over. I got a lot of other stuff on my bucket list, and for some reason my bucket list keeps growing. So
yeah, that's good, mate. And it's good that you've realised that. We lost Chris in a tragedy last year, and I was hanging out a bit with those guys, and I know it affected you a fair bit, and it affected the land speed racing community, and I'm sure it made a lot of people think about the high speed guys especially, that accidents do happen, to some of the best teams in the world. So it's your 320s. I think we've spoken about it privately before, but it probably becomes normal. You talk through. When I used to talk to you and you're saying, yeah, we're going to try to beat 320, and I'm there going far out 320, but to you, it was just a conversation, and it's funny how that speed becomes just normalised, to how fast it really is.
Well, I can tell you when Chris passed, my dad was at the end of the course picking me up. I had just made a qualifier on the way down. We broke a part on the bike. I had the part. I could have replaced it. I saw a wheel go rolling across the return road. I see the big, the whole crash happened right in front of us. And I just spoke to Chris right before he passed. And, you got to think to yourself, if it can happen to Chris with a level of technology that's light years beyond what I'm playing with, and a budget that's seemingly capable of buying all the safety you could get in a land speed vehicle, who am I to think I'm going to live any longer than a guy with all of those resources? So 320 to beat it would be great, but it's going to require a course that we may or may not ever see again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
When I went 320 in 2018, we had 7 miles of billiard table. It was perfect. To ever go any faster than what I've already done is going to take conditions that we may never see again.
Sure.
So, if I never see conditions better than 2018, I'm just spinning my wheels out there. So,
yeah. Mate, I look forward to spending many times with you ticking off a few of those bucket list items. that I'm sure that are growing. I hope I'm there to share a few of them with you. Last but not least, I know there's some very important people in your life that have helped you over that 2 decades, and you say for that 20 minutes a year you got the thrill, but they worked as hard most of the time and got sunburnt and had those long days out in the sun. There's some people close to you want to thank for their time in your land speed racing?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents have been there every step of the way. 2 wives now. The first wife, I think the sport pretty much burnt her out. She parted ways, and now I'm on to wife number 2, and she seems to really enjoy the sport. So we'll see how long she can tough it out. But she's a trooper. My hat's off to her. You see the bald spot. Yeah. My hat's off to my forever wife.
She's a good woman.
Oh man, and I'll tell you, she has been my biggest supporter. Kind of as my parents have tapered off a little bit in how much they can really support. My dad started out helping me at the Salt Flats when he was in his 50s, and now here he is in his 70s, and he's hitting a limit where you just can't spend 14 hours a day getting baked in the sun at the Salt Flats. And my wife, Michelle, has just been never once said no about any of the stuff that my harebrained ideas of, well, I think we should put the 2-liter turbo motor and do this. And she's always like, oh, sounds good. Let's do it.
Good girl.
Yeah. A lot of friends, I have so many buddies come over and just help me wrench and help me build stuff. Jesse Brown with JB Tech. That guy is instrumental in getting me over 280. I was literally hung up at 280 mile an hour. And Jesse was like, I met him in a Facebook argument about intercoolers. And I thought to myself, this guy is the real deal. He knows what he's talking about. And our argument is, like how all good bets are made. Everybody thinks they're right. And I said, all right, go run a Harley with no intercooler and see what it does for you. He goes and runs a Harley with no intercooler, and his charge air temps go through the roof. He melts pistons. He throws an intercooler on it, and he says, maybe there's something to be learned from old dummy John Levie. So before you know it, I actually officiated Jesse's wedding with his forever wife. Let's hope she doesn't burn out on land speed racing. But that's another lifelong friend right there, that he's one of those dudes that I could call up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I need bailed out, and he'd be here in a minute.
He's an interesting cat, that's for sure. And I'm sure his wife is his forever wife, because he's an individual, and you know what you're getting, I reckon. I've had the pleasure a couple of times now, so yeah, no, he's a good dude. Mate,
yeah.
Look, we could probably talk for hours, but my Zoom says I've only got 5 minutes left, and I know it's probably late there in Elko, so I want to thank you for your time, and really look forward to catching up in August later this year. And thanks for being on an episode of My Mate's Faster, and love you, mate, and your family, and I can't wait to catch up.
Love you too, bro. And hey, remember, Speed Week, Saturday after the drivers meeting, riders meeting at the start line, we're going to have a memorial for Scott Guthrie. So if we could get anybody with a story to share, or, whatever you want to say about old Mr. Guthrie.
Yeah, the legend.
Feel free to come on by. We're going to do it by the start line on the long course. I think that's where Scott would have wanted to have been sent off. So,
yeah, there's not much he didn't do in the sport, and definitely a legend and a good bloke. And thanks, mate. And I'll see you before then. I'll see you at your house when I'm banging on the door. And I look forward to hanging out and catching up.
Right on, man. We'll catch you later.
Okay. See you, dude. Take care.
Later.
I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for watching this episode of My Mate's Faster. Please stay tuned for the next one. Like and subscribe below, and see you soon.